manager and earned $3.3 billion in 2007 alone by placing bets on the subprime mortgage market. This means he earned his wealth from leveraging on people losing their houses. Putting that aside, opposition, they're standing for more than foreign, and in terms of, they're not standing for ethics and how people actually earn their money, and it's something that proposition cannot stand for. I'll be forwarding to you two main points of contention. Firstly, on the idea of equal opportunity, and secondly, on the idea of who brings about a greater half. So, but before that, a housekeeping issue, right? We'd like to point out that our policy stated that $30 million is actually because 0.01% of the population actually earns this $30 million yearly. So we'd like to point out this is not an arbitrary number like they tried to tell us, right? We think that yes, we will benefit the majority of society simply because of the obscene amount of wealth these people earn, and because of this large amount of wealth accumulation, there's going to be a large amount of wealth redistribution. So we think that this will actually bring about massive societal benefit. We think that ultimately there will be political role because of the societal climate of today. So moving on to my points of contention. Firstly, on the entire idea of equal opportunity. To try to paint the picture of how on their side, there's still going to be equal opportunity for everyone to succeed. We tell you that this is not true, because today we are in a situation where the 99% of the people cannot emulate the top 0.01%'s wealth due to the sheer unattainability of this wealth. Because when we see that the average millionaire is now earning only $36,000 a year, while in comparison to these CEOs on Wall Street, they earn such a great amount of money, they are never going to be able to attain this wealth regardless of how much hard work they actually put into it. We see that as such, on their side, there's a gross violation of capitalism simply because they are not regulating it. Secondly, we think that the second reason why they cannot attain this wealth is because of the systemic subjugation accelerated by the privileged position in which the wealth try to hoard their wealth even more. I think that as such, it is not possible to have equal opportunity on their side, right? But we fall into the idea that there's going to be no motivation on their side for people to work hard, simply because of the loss of hope. Because these people in the middle class now understand that the wealth is going to be unattainable no matter how hard they work. And because of this idea, they're not going to be motivated as hard to work. Later on their side, they're allowing for a lot of aspirational effects to exist in capitalism. Later on our side, while we recognize that we're going to be punishing the rich, we think that it's a minimal reduction for a large benefit. And as such, we think that the motivation is better on our side because the government recognizes that unfettered capitalism is not a sustainable system, and as such stepping in to ensure that everyone has a more of an equal, level playing field to work on. So that secondly, on the entire idea of harms, right, they try to tell us, right, that on our side there's going to be lots of foreign direct investment and blah blah blah, right. We think that firstly, right, we think this is not true simply because when someone invests in a country, it's actually not solely because of how much tax how much I'm going to be taxed, right, but simply there's other factors, which is why even though Singapore has a high income tax, people still flock to our country to invest. Because, right, we have been such a security and a good environment, a lot of financial opportunities, and as such, we think that on the outside, foreign direct investment will still prosper, right? Even if we admit that foreign direct investment may be impacted a little bit, right? We think that ultimately we're okay with sacrificing this simply because of the principles we have never really dealt with. We think that ultimately on the outside, they're not dealing with my first speaker's substantive, right? We think that ultimately on the outside, we're going to be breeding a better economic system simply because we do not rely on investment bankers or stockbrokers to fuel our economy. So moving on to my substantive today on how we mitigate the harms of status quo. Before that, yes, sir.
That we do not believe that there will be a loss of hope because at the end of the day, Apple started in the garage now, and right now it's a multi-million-dollar company.
So these are all isolated examples. When you look at the 2008 Occupy Wall Street movement, right, why did it happen? Why did the 99% of people revolt against 1%? Obviously, we have come to a point in time where the opportunity is so limited, and people are obviously breed a lot of resentment towards the 0.01% of people simply because they are deprived of opportunity. So moving back to my case, right, we think that the harm that exists in status quo, such that the individual monopolization of social agendas exists with very deep pockets. Super rich individuals are now able to wield disproportionate influence among policymakers and legislators through funding of lobby groups and campaign finance donations. We give you the example of the Koch brothers of Koch Industries, which helped to fund organizations such as Americans for Prosperity, which is one of the largest financial backers of the Tea Party. They actively oppose affordable healthcare and clean energy simply because these policies go against their personal interest of wealth accumulation. We see that donations to Americans for Prosperity prosperity from the Koch brothers actually influenced more than 400 members of Congress to sign a pledge to vote against climate change legislation that does not include equivalent tax cuts. This obviously goes against democracy and how ultimately one person, one vote should still exist. I think that ultimately your money allows you to hold more influence over the political agenda in status quo. While we can see that money has always been a factor in politics, right? We think the extent to which the system has been abused, such an individual can now offer millions of political parties and actually influence the agenda to such a large degree is unacceptable, and the government must step in. Considering the top 1% has a very different point of view from the rest of the majority, I think that it's even more important that the government must step in to accept democratic principle. We give an example of Goldman Sachs and how other corporations can help elect the majority of Congress by donating $1.6 billion in campaign donations and actually get a $20 billion bailout, which obviously goes against all majorities' views, right? I think that while we admit that our side is not going to be a panacea to the problem, we think that we have to reduce and minimize the problem from festering, which alternatively on their side, they do nothing to do. And as such, one of the side that protects the democratic principle and goes for capitalism.
Rich people are investing in medical industries. They've dropped and completely ignored the fact that rich people do benefit our society in many ways, and they haven't come up with a response to that. However, I do have 3 questions to ask for the things that they did deal with in the end. Firstly, whether our side is better at closing the income inequality, the answer is yes. Secondly, whether or not they deserve this income in the first place, the answer is yes. And thirdly, whether or not our side better mitigates the harms of society, the answer is also yes. On to my first question, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they've come up here and they've told us that under their policy, only the 0.01% of society is going to be affected. Well, under that, how much government revenue are they actually going to receive that's going to make a positive impact on society? If 0.01% of the people are being taxed, the amount that you're going to get from this policy is going to be extremely low, so you're not going to be able to actually make a proper social redistribution change. And now, so what's going to happen actually is people are going to aim for the cap. They're not going to aim to go above the cap like Bill Gates or whatever. They're going to aim to hit the cap exactly, and so people aren't going to be able to tax them as much, ladies and gentlemen. So that policy completely stands because they have no money to carry out whatever social redistribution that they speak of. Now, what happens is, instead, the rich might decide to leave the country or transfer their money to offshore accounts because their money that they worked so hard for is being taxed, excessively penalized. So they don't see this as fair, and that's why they're not going to benefit from this policy that they've come up here and told us here, ladies and gentlemen. And so they told us that there's not going to be any motivation for people when they see people so rich that people in the middle class aren't going to be motivated. Well, we say this is completely not true, because if you look at Bill Gates, if a middle class man looks at Bill Gates and he sees how much money he's bringing, he's going to be motivated to say, I'm going to want to break the boundaries, I know I can do this, I'm going to do this as well, and I'm going to get to that level, ladies and gentlemen. So under their side, they remove this motivation, and there's no psycho benefit whatsoever on their side, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the difference between our side and their side is we give these people equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, which I'll be speaking more about my second question. Moving on to that. Now, yes, why do these people deserve their income? They work to the top. They work so hard, and the nature of their job is so stressful that every small mistake has extreme consequences. If a Toyota CEO makes a mistake, it's going to affect people all around the world. Similarly, for other CEOs and other people in these positions in this general, the sheer stress that comes from their job needs the monetary incentive for these people to stay inside it. So they do deserve this income because of the sheer harm that's happening to them on their level. They need to stay inside there so that they can carry out their policies, so that they can continue with their job and do it effectively, ladies and gentlemen. So what they're proposing is not an extension of the same principle of taxation, as they say, and we're not being passive. Instead, we're being fair to these people for the work that they do. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not up to the proposition to decide who deserves this money more. It's not up to them to say, look, doesn't matter how hard you work, I'm not going to give you that money. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not true. Now, they said that these rich people are just going to be earning wealth on other people's debts. Well, this is why we have progressive taxation. Because we do believe in taxation. We do believe that you do have to give back a little bit to society. We just wouldn't excessively penalize our rich people as they would on their side, ladies and gentlemen. So our side is a much better, a much fairer, and a much more just economic system. Moving on to my third question for tonight. Now, on whether or not our side better mitigates the harms of society. Well, if anything, their side maintains this this harm. Because when they create this gap, like I said previously, companies are going to strive for a cap. And because of the prestige that comes with being a CEO, everyone else's taxes, everybody else's income is probably going to be lowered as well. And when this happens, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't lessen the harm. In fact, it just fossilizes the income gap that's already there. It doesn't solve it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be fooled by that. Now, so they told us that people use wealth accumulation for their personal interest. Well, we don't see a problem with that. If I'm going to work to the top of a company just so I can earn 10, just so I can buy 10 Ferraris, that's okay. Because you're still putting in the effort and we see that that's fine. So money has always been a factor of politics. Like they said, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to my constructive matter today. Now, on how their side encourages perverse economic incentives. The thesis of this argument is that when maximum incomes are introduced, high-ranking civilians will be more likely to stop declaring income. When the rich and influential person realizes that he's not earning the income that he deserves, but instead earning a disproportionate income, he's more likely to resort to work that is undeclared, resulting in the formation of a black or shadow economy, illicit economic activity occurring alongside the country's official economy. But before I move on, yes ma'am.
Do you think that the Wolf of Wall Street deserved money when it caused the credit crisis in 2008?
Well, the Wolf of Wall Street is really, you only see that kind of incident happen one time. It's really a minority, and we don't see how that's really relevant to this debate. Because in that case, it was due to poor government management, it was due to poor management, and it's really not related to any incentives on the rich people as well. So what happens in the shadow economy? This may be a form of black market transactions or undeclared work. And in either case, taxes aren't being paid since the income is undeclared. So the government revenue of the country falls completely and leading to a less fiscal policies being made by and less development of the country as a whole. Only the criminals of the country will benefit since the demand for black market transactions increases while the rest of the populace suffers as a result of their policy. Now, persons of high influence are also more prone to corruption as they may seek to fulfill the gap between their previous income and their current extremely disproportionate one. And this can lead to rampant corruption in the country where politicians may embezzle funds or start funding or associating with crime as an alternative source of income. Bribe-taking amongst police commissioners in Indonesia, for example, is particularly pernicious as it hurts the integrity of the government. And this kind of thing can happen on their side. On our side, we don't see this problem occurring as there's already enough monetary incentive to keep people working, to keep the country just, while on their side, we see a complete collapse of the country's official economy, a rise in undeclared income, as well as the possibility of corruption. Furthermore, in order to protect the money, the rich are going to channel their funds to offshore accounts. So, like Switzerland and the remote tax. So the money that could have been used in our economy is now left dormant in another country. Ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, go with the opposition in this debate. Thank you.